Hello there, everybody. I know it's been a while since I've posted on this channel. If you're someone that's actually been subscribed to this channel since the video before this one, and yeah, I said I was gonna make videos on the Last Jedi and stuff after that came out. Well, you can probably see just on the channel how that went. But basically, the Last Jedi just really didn't impress me, and I started to lose interest in Star Wars. I was still reading old canon books, and I am still reading old canon books, and I'm rewatching Clone Wars, and I'm doing all these things. I'm still a huge fan of Star Wars, but the new canon has really, really disappointed me so far, and I really just lost interest in making videos. But I got a bunch of new ideas for videos now, and I'm going to start trying to make regular content for this channel again. But I am going on vacation soon, so the video flow might be a little bit weird right now. But over the course of the last bit of 2018 and into 2019, there will be a regular amount of videos coming out. And I know that on this channel before, if you've been subscribed like for the very beginning, you know that I have a terrible history of keeping schedule. And if you follow my other channels, then you know I again have a terrible history of keeping schedule just about everywhere. But anyways, that's out of the way for the meta update. And what I wanted to talk about is the impact that the Clone Wars has had on my life since I was a little kid. And this video is completely unscripted. It's mostly off the top of my head. I've thought about it in the shower, basically. And it was just a little idea that I wrote down. I don't have any script here. This is all just off the top of my head, and I have not slept. I've been awake for about 22 hours now, and I have not slept. So this might be a little bit weird, but I want to make this video and try and get it out before I go on vacation. So there's there's something on this channel at least to try and tide some people over, and maybe bring attention to this channel from the other channels that I have that have a bigger subscriber count. Anyways, enough tangents. So the Clone Wars has had a really big impact on my life since I was a very little kid. When it came out, I think it came out in the movie was like, what was it, 2007, 2008? Let me look it up. Clone Wars movie 2008. Okay, so yeah, the movie was 2008, and that means that when that came out, I was 6 years old. I was actually only around 4 months into being 6 years old when the movie came out. That is just crazy to me. But yeah, I can still remember watching that movie when it came out in theaters. I remember seeing it in theaters. Holy crap. And I remember a lot of it. And I haven't even rewatched that movie since I was that young and saw it in theaters, and I remember it pretty clearly. Which just goes to show that even though it's been such a long time and it was a fairly mediocre movie, it shows that it had such a big impact on my life, and I don't think I would remember that movie as well without the TV series to continue the story. And after that, I was an avid watcher of Cartoon Network at that point, because I was a 6-7-year-old kid, and Cartoon Network was really good at the time. There was lots of really good shows on there. It was Cartoon Network in its prime, basically the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s. They had a lot of shows from the early 2000s that got reruns on there, like Ed, Edd and Eddy and stuff like that. So it was basically the golden age of Cartoon Network, where you had these new shows coming in that were very innovative and good and had a lot of new animation technology, but then you also had reruns of the more classic shows. So you got a mix of both of them, and there was just, it was the perfect time to be growing up with Cartoon Network. I really can't stress that enough. And then the Clone Wars started. So I was an avid watcher of Cartoon Network already, so I saw the announcement for the Clone Wars TV series, on a commercial for Cartoon Network after a show. And I remember seeing the announcement too, which is, again, it's crazy that I can remember all of these things. But I was super, super excited at that point. That's what I remember. Most of my childhood memories are the Clone Wars. There's really not much I can remember about my early years unless I get a specific memory, like a specific event brought up by a friend or a family member. There's not anything I can really remember off the top of my head, as well as anything to do with the Clone Wars. And I'll go more into that later, but this will play into the rest of the things I'm talking about. And I can't really remember watching anything from season 1, particularly at the time, and really I don't know what my thoughts were. But I kept watching the show, every single Saturday morning when I woke up, because basically it would air on Sunday. It would air on Friday nights at around 9 o'clock, give or take, and that was past my bedtime. So I had to watch it the next morning, and I would always, without fail, watch it the next Saturday morning. Right when I woke up. It was one of the first things that I did every morning, and it was kind of my weekly ritual, and it was the one thing I looked forward to more than anything else. And for the big finales and everything, like for the finales of seasons and like the mid-season stuff, I would usually stay up and watch the finale on Fridays, and of course for like season 4 and 5, I was watching them when they when they aired all the time, because I was actually old enough to stay up past 9. Who would have guessed? But moving into like season 3. Season 3 is where I can look on the show and remember my first time watching a little bit more. Actually, now that I think about it, I do remember watching the Malevolence arc when I was younger. I have rewatched Clone Wars recently. I rewatched season 1 and 2 and half of season 3 about 7 months ago, and then I continued it just 2 weeks ago, continuing with the middle of season 3. Now I'm on season 5, and I just to quickly throw it in there, I'm enjoying the show even more now than I did when I was a kid, and there's so many little foreshadowing and subtleties and little hints in there, and so much symbolism that I never noticed before, and it's really crazy how much they fit that in there. It's pretty interesting to see the contrast between my opinion of the show as a kid and what I noticed then and what I noticed now. But that can be a video for another day. Anyways, and so I can remember watching a few episodes. I remember my thoughts, and I remember really liking Wolfpack and Plo Koon. I think that the Malevolence arc is really what made the Wolfpack my favorite, because Wolfpack is to this day my favorite, but like squad or battalion in Star Wars, other than Delta Squad, of course. My name, Delta, and Commander Wolf, probably one of my favorite clones, definitely my favorite clone commander, 100%. He's a great character. I really like his just the design of the Phase 2 armor alone it's probably the best Phase 2 armor design there is. But I remember some of my thoughts into season 3, and I remember very specifically talking to my dad about the season 3 parts in season 3 and season 4, and I was talking about how the show was starting to get darker. And it's pretty great that, even when I was a kid, I was able to recognize that the show was going for a darker tone, even for Star Wars, and that they were starting to shift the show from being that normal kid show to being a more darker take on things in the Star Wars universe. And I think that a lot of kids my age, even like, a little bit older or younger, just in the same range, would have picked up on the same thing. It's not like I'm some like special prodigy. Oh, I noticed the show was dark. But I remember very particularly like seeing the trailer for season 4, the preview for season 4. The preview for season 4. I very clearly remember seeing the Phase 2 helmets and thinking, yeah, those look a lot like Stormtrooper helmets. I never realized that when I watched Revenge of the Sith a million times for some reason, but I very clearly noticed, like, wow, those are like basically Stormtrooper helmets. I see that they're kind of going over the transition of the the Republic to the Empire and all of that, and that was all really really cool. It's just really amazing that they threw those little elements in there to tease at what's happening in the future and stuff like that. But I very clearly remember watching Umbara too. Umbara, to this day, probably one of my favorite arcs of the entire the entire show. It was really great. It was really well done, and I remember watching it when I was a kid. It really just amazed me, and with the quality of the animation, the storytelling, the darkness, while not being like overly edgy, but them still incorporating those darker elements into a Star Wars story that was originally meant for kids, and the character development they had in the clone characters, like they really brought out the personalities of Captain Rex and Fives in that arc in such a way that really humanized them, that in ways the show hadn't before, specifically with those characters, because clones like 99 and Domino Squad had been pretty well developed at that point in the show. But it really just amazed me as a kid, and I think that's the point where Clone Wars just became that thing for me that could not be replaced. It was a huge part of my life from then on. And I remember, I think this was either during season 3 or 4, one Halloween, I think I was in grade, what grade was I in? I was either in grade 2, no, it wasn't grade 2. I think I was in grade 3. It was either grade 3 or grade 4. Definitely one of those two. Where I actually went out on Halloween as Captain Rex. Like, I bought a Captain Rex Halloween costume at Walmart, the Phase 1. And I think I still have that costume lying around somewhere. I did in the past few years, but I think we've thrown it out now. And yeah, I went as Captain Rex on one Halloween. So if that doesn't show how much I loved the Clone Wars and loved the characters in it, then I really don't know what does. Just the fact that, you know, I was so attached to the characters that I was willing to go out on Halloween as a specific character from Star Wars, and especially at the time. I mean, Star Wars wasn't seen as like that nerdy or geeky, and I was already accepted as the huge nerd of the class. But it definitely goes to show that even though, like, you know, Star Wars is considered very nerdy, I was still willing to go out as a Star Wars character, and from a more obscure Star Wars thing as well. And even a lot of my friends recognized Captain Rex, even though they hadn't seen the Clone Wars, which again, it shows at the time that how big Clone Wars had become and how influential it had become. You know, even without being extremely popular out of its given circle, non-Star Wars fans still recognized one of the main staple characters. And basically, let me get back on the point of this video, which is the impact it's had on my life. So I kept watching it throughout the entire run of the show. Season 5, I loved Season 5. It was really well done, and the news of the Disney buying really worried me, and I pretty much expected the cancellation to happen, but it really crushed me. And you know, it was a really sad thing that it got canceled. Now, the Netflix thing of Season 6 getting the Lost Missions getting put out again was another amazing moment that I was so happy to see, where I could give a sort of send off to the show. But no matter what, I was not able to replace the show. I have not found one show that has ever been as good as the Clone Wars, or had as much of an emotional impact on me, or a mental impact, or been as memorable. And I have not been able to let go of the Clone Wars ever since, and that's proven by the fact that, well, here I am running this channel, but further than that, I've been running Gary's Mod Star Wars RP, particularly Clone Wars RP, for the past 3 years now, since I was in grade 8. And I remember when I first found Clone Wars RP in grade 8, and I got really addicted to it in September. And then after the one server I played on shut down, I made my own, and me and my best friend, who I got him into Clone Wars through Clone Wars RP, and then he watched all the Clone Wars and became a huge Star Wars fan when he did not really care about Star Wars at all before that, which again, another huge impact on my life that Clone Wars has had. We decided to develop a server together. Now, we both knew absolutely nothing about developing a server. He only had about 100 hours on Gary's Mod. I had about, give or take, 600, maybe 500 to 600 hours. And we went on the mission of developing our own server from scratch with basically no outside help that I can remember. And it was a pain. It was a complete pain. Now, we could probably develop a server, a Clone Wars RP server off the top of our heads. There really isn't, you know, it's basically just pure memory at this point, but and it's not even a difficult thing. It's that we had to teach ourselves to do it, and especially when we were in grade 8 too. And there was lots of sleepless nights of working on it and getting it out there, and I had so much fun making it, even though it really crushed my sleep schedule and made my school time pretty difficult, because I was always just slugging myself through the day because I was so goddamn tired. But it really was a great moment of my life where I really got into Gary's Mod and got more involved in any community than I ever have before, running my own Gary's Mod server tied to Clone Wars with a bunch of other Clone Wars fans who shared the same sort of childhood experience as me, who now wanted to go back to that world again. They just couldn't separate themselves from it, just like I couldn't, I mean. And again, that was another aspect of the show that has carried into my life till today. And it's really just something that I have not, let go of. As I'm recording this, I'm making plans with, my other friends to make another Star Wars RP server, a Clone Wars RP server, and run it to run it with alongside the hype of the next season of Clone Wars. And I would have never met so many of the people that I met online without Clone Wars RP. And I never would have played Clone Wars RP if I never became a fan of the Clone Wars. And just to think about all of the people that I've met through Gary's Mod, through Clone Wars RP, all of the things that I've learned about development, about the gaming community. I don't even know if I would have started content creation without it. Because guess what? Here's another thing. I started content creation on YouTube with Clone Wars. Right? You never would have guessed. But this channel called Delta used to be called Midget Panda, and Midget Panda was the username I used on everything. For some reason, I used either Midget Panda or Lightsider Delta, which Lightsider Delta was a name that I came up with when I was 9 years old for my SWOTOR account, and you can kind of see how that carried into my username today, maybe. And I completely forgot where I was. Give me a second. I don't want to edit this part out. Lightsider Delta. Oh yeah, this is getting edited. Okay, so I was talking about the origins of the channel. So yeah, this channel used to be called Midget Panda, and I was playing Star Wars. I was playing Clone Wars RP at this time. I didn't find Clone Wars RP in grade 8. But that's when I really started getting really big into it and playing it a lot more. I did find it in grade 7 and started playing it in grade 7, I think in between grade 6 and grade 7 summer. And I remember in between grade 6 and grade 7 summer, I found a server. I clearly forget the name, but it was the first Star Wars RP server I ever played on. And one of my friends on the internet at that time, who I don't really talk to anymore, I don't think I've talked to him for like a year, but he was big into YouTube, and we would do videos together, like on Minecraft and Gary's Mod and stuff like that. I didn't make anything of my own at that time, but he was all into his channel, and basically that's what got me into Gary's Mod and the idea of making videos. So through his recommendation, I downloaded a free trial of Sony Vegas Pro 13, which was the most recent version of Sony Vegas at the time, and I edited together some footage that I recorded when I was on that server. And on that server, there was a medic regiment that had the med bay, and they would roleplay in the med bay. Oh, and it was hilarious. I wish I didn't delete these videos because they were... I wish I had them around because they were hilarious. It was a 4 or 5 part series. I don't remember, but it was at least 4, no longer than 5. And it was called The Insane Patient. And I was a medical officer in the med bay. And basically, one guy came in role-playing one day, just acting completely bonkers. Like, he was completely wild. He was crazy, and he was hilarious. It was just so funny. Probably one of my favorite memories of Gary's Mod and gaming ever to this day. And I recorded all of it from beginning to end, his story from, introducing himself into the med bay to us quarantining him and trying to cure him and all of that, to getting chased down by the military police and eventually banned from the server. It was a very sad, emotional journey. And it was the first video that I ever edited in Sony Vegas. And it is what taught me how to edit in Sony Vegas. It's how I taught myself, and I made all of them. I edited all of them, and basically Sony Vegas, I found out that they had a huge watermark on the free trial, so I deleted the free trial and then edited it in Movie Maker, all 4 parts. I made my own thumbnail for them. I used, I made an intro and outro. I used that, the royalty-free EDM music and all that, and I edited my first videos ever through that. And again, that was all because of Clone Wars. It's, it's really crazy. I didn't even realize until I thought about this a couple days ago how much Clone Wars is carried into everything I do now. The first time I ever edited, some of my favorite gaming moments, getting into Gary's Mod, recording and making my own videos on gaming for the first time, actually posting videos on my YouTube channel for the first time, aside from the time when I made 2 Roblox videos when I was 9 years old, which doesn't count because I think every 9-year-old did that. So it's it's really just crazy how much of an influence it's had on my life. And I was thinking, because I had the idea of just, in the shower, right, I was just thinking, what has the Clone Wars affected in my life? And I thought that, that's probably a pretty rudimentary thing, and I know it's had a lot of effect on me, but I didn't think it would have gone as far as it did. And when I started thinking about things and going through the chronological order and then going off into these branches and realizing how many things it's done. You know, I'll do like a tree, like a family tree sort of thing here, for what the Clone Wars has like inspired me to do, or has gotten me to do, or has had an effect on my life, or who it's made me meet, or something like that. I'll have a whole tree of things that lead into each other. But it's really like I never realized how deep the rabbit hole goes with it until I started thinking about it, and it's really just unbelievable after I started thinking about it. It's crazy that one show could have so much effect on my life, and how differently things could have been. I'm not saying for the better or the worse. I'm just saying, like, you know, what my interests would be completely different. And it's pretty much inevitable that I would become a big fan of the Clone Wars, because I was already a huge fan of Star Wars before the Clone Wars ever existed, and I was already playing the crap out of the games and everything at that point on my computer. So, you know, it was basically impossible that I was going to, you know, to not become a fan of Clone Wars. But if I didn't, it would have changed a lot of things. And that reminds me with gaming and stuff. Clone Wars also introduced me into the game Clone Wars Adventures with Star Wars games, right? And Clone Wars Adventures, if you've been following this channel since the beginning, is the first video on this channel that's currently posted. I have videos before this that were, again, under the title of Midget Panda, that were gaming videos that I all edited with under the influence of my first Insane Patient videos in that same sort of funny moment style. But I changed this channel to be focused on Star Wars. And my first video is Clone Wars Adventures, which again is something that I played a ton of because I was a huge fan of Clone Wars, and I would play that game with all the new updates that would come out per episode. So again, another thing that is carried into my current life that I'm still involved with, and that video ended up getting 1,000 views and kickstarting my channel and inspiring me to keep going with this channel and make more Star Wars content, which again is just... it's really just crazy. And that entire video launched me into doing these more commentary style, you know, over gameplay videos, which, again, put me into doing my Let's Play. So there's adding more to my Let's Play channel. So there's adding more to the branch. And then going to Twitch. This is getting to a bit of a stretch. I probably would have done these things anyway. But that is the kickstarting of my commentary career, you could say. So again, these branches, on my visualization, I'll have the lines getting thinner and thinner, but there's still a connection. There's probably outside things, other things that are influencing these decisions and these interests that I have. But the Clone Wars is always at least a part, or a very major part behind it most of the time. Which again is just crazy. Now, I think this video is getting upwards of like 30 minutes, and I don't think anybody is still watching. And I've got to edit all of this. So I think I'm going to end it there. Now, I'm sure there's more things I could go into, more things I could think about that the Clone Wars connects to. But I think that's enough thinking in terms of, you know, that's enough of a thought experiment for one day for me. And I've got to record more videos in advance for my vacation. So, yeah, I've got a lot more work to do. I can't burn out all my energy on this 30-minute video. It's using all of the brain power I have left from doing an all-nighter. So, I want to hear in the comments, if any of you are still watching, what Clone Wars, or even Star Wars as a whole, has influenced in your life. What things, what activities, what hobbies, what things in your life, like people you've met, or connections you formed, or friendships that have been strengthened with other people, have been made because of Clone Wars or Star Wars? I would be really interested to see, because I know that there is more, and I've talked to some of my friends online about the effect that Clone Wars has had on them, or even a different TV show or Star Wars as a whole. And it always has a really, really massively, surprisingly large change. So I'm interested to see what some of the strangers on the internet have to say about that. So thanks for watching, and I will catch you all in the next video.